Hello everyone, my name is Makeda Voletta, also known as the Body Scientist. And for those of you who don't know, I am a strength and conditioning coach, an exercise physiologist, and a nutritionist with a specialty in sports nutrition. Okay? And today I'm going to speak to you about the movie Soul Food Junkies, the documentary that was recently done. I briefly heard about it. I was doing a radio show in New York where someone had me come in, Tasty Quiche from TK in the AM. She had me come in and talk about nutrition, specifically a lot of the vegan propaganda that is being pushed. And I guess before she had me on, they were speaking about the documentary Soul Food Junkies. And so that's when I first heard about it. Then I started seeing people post it on Facebook, and people were writing about it as if like, oh, it's such a great documentary. This is, so important. It's so true. And I took a look at it, and there were a lot of things that I found, a lot of issues that I had with it. Okay. And this is something I talk about a lot. If you look at some of my other videos, like sacred animal foods are sacred to, or sacred animal foods. That's the name of the video. I have a video called Sacred Animal Foods, another video called Examining Vegan Propaganda, and you can find them on my YouTube video, The Body Scientist 81, where I go into depth about a lot of these things. Also, my video all about fat, where I'm talking about the different types of fats, the types of fats that are good and types of fats that are not good, and also my reduce inflammation video, where I'm speaking about how to reduce inflammation in the body and why inflammation in the body is so bad, of any sort. Okay, so if you look at those videos, they give a lot of background so that I don't, I won't repeat a lot of the same points, but I will brush over them. I want to say that, the idea that soul food is not good. Now, modern day soul food, okay, how it's cooked today is not good, because none of the food that's being cooked in the United States and a lot of the developed world is healthy, because people have bought into the propaganda from the vegetable oil companies, the big industrial vegetable oil companies. They have bought into the propaganda that margarine is healthier than butter, and that Crisco is a healthier alternative for lard. Okay? And that tropical oils like coconut oil and palm oil are bad for you. That's what I learned in my nutrition classes, okay? When we took classes where we were told what to tell people, what was good, what was not. We were told that coconut oil, palm oil, all tropical oils are bad for you. And of course animal fats, okay? But in basic chemistry, we learn about molecules, saturated and unsaturated molecules, fats, okay, the difference. And I don't have a diagram right now, but we have Google, so you can Google the chemistry of a saturated versus unsaturated fats. And what you will find is that what defines a saturated fat is that every carbon molecule in that chain, every carbon can have 4 bonds bonded to it in its outer shell. So a saturated molecule, every carbon has 4 hydrogens bound to it, or not 4 hydrogens. Some of them have 2 hydrogens, some of them have 3 hydrogens, but basically there's no double bonds, okay? There's no double bonds in between any of the carbons, okay? It's all single bonds, and it's fully saturated with single bonds, okay? So every carbon has 4 bonds consumed, whether it be carbon or hydrogen that's attached to it. In an unsaturated molecule, a monounsaturated molecule, you have 1 double bond in between those 2 carbons. In a polyunsaturated fat, you have 2 or more double bonds, okay, in between carbons. The double bonds make the molecule more unstable, okay? So that's what makes the more unsaturated a molecule is, the more unsaturated fat is, the more unstable it is when air, light, and heat are applied to it, okay? Air, light, and heat. They become unstable, and they go rancid. They become bad, Okay, so saturated fats are much more stable. They are not easily destructed by light, air, and heat the way unsaturated fats are. Okay, so when cooking, it really is best to cook with saturated fats. Monosaturated fats are not the best, but they're better than polyunsaturated fats. Now, coconut oil and palm oil are both saturated fats. They're great. They're great for your skin. They're great to consume. Coconut oil is full of short chain fatty acids and MCT fats, which actually help you burn fat and speed up your metabolism. Also, the fat found in grass-fed raw milk and butter also has a lot of short chain fatty acids and MCT fats, as does the egg yolks of eggs chickens or different birds that were raised on pasture, their natural wild diet. And so those are also very good sources of saturated fat. Then we have the polyunsaturated fats, like the fats found in fish oil, which is also extremely good for your brain and pro-inflammatory. The omega-3 fats that come from animals. The omega-3 fats that come from plants are not the same. They do not have the same anti-inflammatory effect, and they do not have the same effect on our brain. They're not the same. The DHA and EPA fats come only from animal sources, and they come from liver oils of sea animals, and they come from the milk, raw milk of grass-fed animals. Okay, raw dairy of grass-fed animals also has omega-3 fats. Now, these fats need to be kept cold. Okay, that's why the Eskimos, they eat their fish raw. They're up there, they eat a whole bunch of fatty fish. They eat their fish cold. They're in the cold climate. Those fish are different than tropical fish. Okay. However, people have been using fire humans have been using fire for hundreds of thousands of years. And when our species discovered fire, it was a big deal. Okay. When we started cooking our food, our brains got bigger and we got smarter. Okay. Our brains got bigger and we got smarter. Now, this is a scientific fact that anybody can look up. So the idea that we're supposed to eat all raw foods doesn't hold any kind of validity, because even if you look around the world, people use fire. Not to say that people don't eat some foods raw, and most of the foods that people do eat raw are fermented. They've been sitting out. They've been lacto-fermented. They've been sitting out, and so the bacteria has digested a lot of it. People do eat raw meat dishes in the world. There are many parts of the world people eat raw meat dishes and organ meats and raw seafood. But people always did use fire, and especially with a lot of plant foods that are actually hard to digest and break down. Okay, anybody with gastrointestinal problems who tries to eat a lot of raw vegetables will find quickly that a lot of times they cannot digest that. Okay, now what does help digestion is bone stocks and broths like chicken broth, beef broth, seafood broth, which is something that people all around the world use to cook with. In Africa, in Europe, the Mediterranean. People talk about the Mediterranean diet in this country as if it's just olive oil and tomatoes and feta cheese. But in the Mediterranean, they eat a lot of organ meats and they consume a lot of broths. Okay, and again, like any French culinary cooking, they're always using stocks and broths. South America, okay, and in this country, we cooked with that a lot. Where you boil all the bones with some type of acid, like some kind of vinegar, and boil the bones for hours and hours and hours, and you get the liquid left over, which you can make a soup with or you can drink. Some Native American tribes were known to prefer broth over water, because broth is actually nourishing and it's hydrating. Okay, whereas water can be actually dehydrating if you drink too much of it. Anyhow, the bone broths, okay, that helps your digestion, okay, and I suggest you look that up too. But consuming gelatinous chicken stock and broths, beef broths, can be made from fish and different seafood. They help your digestion a lot, okay. So somebody with digestive issues should definitely be consuming that. Somebody with any type of bone problems, okay, bone problems, dental problems, should definitely be consuming bone broth on a regular basis. In Africa, in some parts of Africa, like, children, babies were given bone broth immediately. It was considered to be a very important food for the development of your body. And a lot of people in the vegan community talk about how we can get vitamin A from vegetables, from yams or from carrots or from oranges or, kale and greens. But in all reality and truth, plant foods contain beta carotene. Beta carotene is not vitamin A. Okay? True vitamin A is called retinol. Okay? Retinol, which sounds like retina, which is where vitamin A is stored in the body, in the eyeballs. This is the reason why in many countries, many Caribbean countries, people consume fish head soup and they eat the eyeballs. All my friends who grew up in Haiti or Jamaica consuming fish head soup and eating eyeballs, none of them wear glasses. Their eyesight's all superb. Okay? So, and there are stories of Native Americans giving Europeans who are going blind in the woods, giving them deer eyeballs to consume. Why? Because that's the richest source of vitamin A. After the eyeballs would be liver. This is the reason why liver is a very important preconception, pregnancy, and breastfeeding food for women all around the world. Another good source of vitamin A is grass-fed raw butter, but not in comparison to liver and liver oils, like cod liver oil, very high quality cod liver oils. Okay, and you must be careful with that because not all cod liver oils are created equal. Some of them are actually quite toxic. Okay, so I suggest doing your research with that. And I really suggest looking at the work of Weston A. Price. Some people may try to discredit his work, but I say look for yourself because there's no debating. There's no one who's done better research when it comes to nutrition around the world than Weston A. Price. So I say look at his book, Nutrition and Physical Degeneration. You can look at his website, the Weston A. Price Foundation. Check out Sally Fallon's work, Mary Enig, E-N-I-G, PhD. Check out Real Food by Nina Plank. Check out Deep Nutrition, Why Our Genes Need Traditional Foods, written by a medical doctor named Catherine Shanahan and her husband, Luke Shanahan. Check out, what else? And there's Nina Plank, Real Food. And even here on YouTube, check out Sean Croxton in Underground Wellness. He has great information. Danny Vitalis has great information. Okay, these are people that are very well researched and that I highly respect. Okay, so I say look at their work. Okay, because what we do know is that the Okinawa in Japan are the longest living, healthiest people in the world. The number one oil they consume and cook with every single day is lard, okay? And they consume lots of fish broth, like every single day. Then you have the French, who are like the second longest living, healthiest people in the world. And they consume lots of goose fat, duck fat. They cook in lard and butter and heavy cream. And they don't have an epidemic of heart disease and cancer and diabetes or obesity, okay? And if you look around the world, if you look, we all know that Cuba has exports some of the greatest doctors, some of the world's greatest doctors. And Cubans eat a lot of pork. They cook with lard traditionally, as did Dominicans and Haitians and Puerto Ricans and people down south. And, now, like if you know anybody I know who's from down south or from DR, from Africa, from South America, who lived to be 100 plus, have you ever asked what they ate? All those people were like eating pork every day, eat eggs and bacon for breakfast. A lot of times they had a drink every day. But they definitely weren't sitting around eating raw vegetables. And they definitely were not cooking with soybean oil, corn oil, canola oil, margarine, and Crisco. Okay? What we do see is from epidemiological studies is that once the commercial vegetable oil industries, the industrial oils, once they started their campaign that margarine is healthier than butter and Crisco is healthier than lard, and that McDonald's shouldn't cook their French fries in beef tallow, which they used to do. McDonald's, they used to cook their French fries in beef tallow, but then everybody had protest about that being unhealthy, and so they start using canola oil and other rancid vegetable oils. But in all reality, beef tallow is a very healthy fat to cook in. It's a very nourishing fat. We need those fats to get our fat-soluble vitamins. And what I was saying about the vegetables, going back to that, is that vegetables have beta-carotene. Beta-carotene is a precursor of vitamin A. It's a precursor of retinol, okay, which is true vitamin A. But in order for the body to convert beta-carotene into true vitamin A, retinol, in order for that process to happen, saturated fat has to be present. A good amount of saturated fat has to be present. Retinol, vitamin A, is a fat-soluble vitamin. The fat-soluble vitamins are vitamins K, E, D, and A. Those are fat-soluble vitamins, and you need fat to actually digest them. Plant foods have very little fat. That's the reason why people would consume things like berries and cream, peaches and cream. You go to South America, a lot of the Spanish-speaking countries, they make batidos, which are fruit shakes with milk. Okay, granted, yes, now they usually use commercial pasteurized homogenized milk, but that's made with raw milk. Actually is good. It helps you to get a lot of the nutrients out of that fruit. This is the reason why people would make cream spinach or even put turkey neck and stuff in their greens. Okay, because that fat actually helps you to digest get more nutrients out of that plant food. Okay, and it helps your body to convert beta carotene into vitamin A. So that's important. And when you look at how healthy people were, there were a lot of people who lived to be very healthy, had all their teeth, had good eyesight, and were strong, living in their 90s and on, and they consumed soul food. The idea that our ancestors ate, the scraps, and that, they were so dumb. They ate, like, the story that's told is that, the slave masters gave African slaves the leftover scraps, and that's why they ate that. But really, they ate organ meats, okay? The whole world eats organ meats. Look around Asia. Look around Africa, okay? Look around Europe. Look at how much they eat organ meats and how much healthier they are, okay? So people were eating chitlins and gizzards and all kinds of organ meat, yes, but that's because that's where the nutrition was. And if you think about it, why would slave masters want their slaves to be weak? They have to do intense physical labor. They don't want them to be weak. So it would be in their best interest to eat nurturing, nutritious food. They were trying to get as much work as they could out of them, especially in the United States, where there wasn't an excess of Africans like there was in Haiti and Brazil, where they were just literally working people to death. Okay, in the United States, there wasn't an excess of Africans like that. The smallest percentage of us got brought here. But regardless, when you look at the food that Africans eat and how they cook, you see a lot of similarities between that and soul food. Okay. So this new idea that healthy eating is lean meats with no skin and no bones, and no animal fats, and I'm gonna cook with canola oil and eat smart vegetable oil butter replacement, and that all of that is good. That's not healthy. And I'm gonna eat this raw salad. That's gonna be my lunch with all these raw vegetables. I mean, look around the world and see who eats that. Who eats that? I mean, the only time you see that is when people are trying to appeal to Americans. Eating meat on the bone is very important, because like heals like. People talk about that a lot with herbs and how herbs look, and how the herb looks like this, it can heal that part of your body. Yes, well, when it comes to animal foods, like heals like. This is the reason why women, when they were on pre-fertility diets, they would eat the eggs and ovaries of other animals to help with their fertility, and why men who are on pre-fertility diets or want to increase their testosterone will eat the testicles of male animals, or Jamaica, there's cowbell soup. There's things like that. This is why bone stocks help with bone problems. If you have any type of bone problems, you must be consuming bone broths and bone stocks. There's nothing that's more valuable for building your bones. Okay, and you see people all around the world who chew on bones and eat the marrow. A lot of people's grandparents did that. A lot of people's grandparents were sitting there sucking on a bone, and a lot of young people now think that's gross. Oh, that's gross to eat liver. Oh, that's gross, they're sucking on the bone. That's what kept them healthy. Even if there are some people now who have sick grandparents, so maybe the grandparents are in their 70s now, their 80s now, Or maybe there's some people whose grandparents died in their 60s of heart disease or diabetes. A lot of times people want to blame it on the quote-unquote soul food, but really what it is the soda that they were drinking with the soul food. And it was all the cake and crap they ate with it. It wasn't about, there had never been a heart attack ever reported before 1912. That was the first report of heart attack. Some people can say, oh yeah, there were heart attacks, they just didn't, nobody reported it. No, but when you see interviews, and this is the reason why Weston A. Price's work is so critical. Because when you see interviews with doctors who might have worked in reservations or worked in certain rural areas, they talk about how they did not see women having problems giving birth, how women gave birth so easily, especially Native American women. But African women too, if you think about the fact that African women being slaves and doing the same physical labor as the men and pregnant, and then give birth, okay, and then go back the next day next to the men doing work. How many women could do that now? I don't think I know any woman that could do that now. And if I do, then that woman is considered to be a superwoman. But Native American women too, there was so many reports of them just giving birth in the middle of the night, like just going outside while their husband was asleep, delivering their baby, going back to sleep. Next morning, they they wake up the father. She greets him with the baby, and that they could just easily just do it themselves, and it was so quick. And it wasn't until these doctors say it wasn't until the roads came in, and then they have the vegetable oils and the flour and stuff coming in. And these people start consuming that stuff, the sugar, the flour, the vegetable oils, all of which are plant foods, but mind you. But I would never tell someone to not eat plant foods. But all the culprits of diabetes and heart disease and cancer are coming from that, the industrial rancid vegetable oils. Corn oil, soybean oil, canola oil, margarine, Pam, all that crap should never be consumed. It's not healthy in any form of function. And if you go to Whole Foods and you buy soup, guess what's in it? Canola oil. So if you think that you see sick people now, if you think that maybe you saw sick grandparents now, like my grandmother's 91 and my grandmother is still fully functional, and she doesn't have diabetes or anything like that. She's had some digestion issues because when she was younger, in her 20s, she was a hairdresser in the house and she was spraying chemicals, and she got cancer and went through chemotherapy or radiation, one of them, a long time ago. So now she's 91 and she has some issues digesting, but that's it, okay? My grandmother grew up in Florida and she grew up eating, down home southern food. And she is fine, okay? Now my dad and my aunts, who's 70 and 71, they don't have any health problems, okay? Like, they may be a little bit overweight a little bit, but the stuff that they eat, like I was born in 81, so they've been eating they've been eating processed foods for a while, because probably maybe it's like the early 80s, like late 70s, when stuff started really becoming really processed and going downhill. And it's even worse now than it was when I was a kid. So if you see people now in their 20s and their 30s who were born in the 80s who have health problems, the kids born in the 90s and the kids born 10 years ago really have problems. Cancer right now is tied with heart disease as the #1 killer of all Americans. And the fastest growing rate of cancer is in children. Now, how can we blame that on eating pork and eating greens cooked in ham hocks and stuff like that, when people have been eating that for hundreds of years and we're not sick like that? When if you go to Africa, people eat stuff just like that and they don't have an epidemic of heart disease and people with diabetes. They say that New Orleans food is not good, is unhealthy, but New Orleans food is based off of French cooking. And French cooking is some of the healthiest cooking in the world, not according to American standards. People are afraid of fat and animal fat and everything else. But the French are very healthy people, and they're not fat. They don't have an epidemic of diabetes. Germany is #1 in the world with curing cancer and dealing with cancer, and Japan is #2. And they consume lots of animal foods and lard and all types of stuff. Okay? So how can we blame all of that on soul food? There was a very good book written that really talks about this. And the woman who wrote it, she has written lots of cookbooks of African American cooking. And I'm going to give you the title of the book because I was doing a lecture in Philly with a bunch of elders. Like, they were all like in their 60s and older, in African garb, Afrocentric garb, or Afrocentric out. But then, when I started speaking about a lot of the vegan propaganda and pointing to the drums around them, all these African drums that they're sitting there playing, and the connection, the hunting, the skin, the fact that people didn't just kill an animal to make a drum. And that, like, just making these connections between the fact that, yes, we've been eating meat. It is very African to eat meat. It's very indigenous to eat meat. It's very Asian. It's very European. It's very Native American. It's very Polynesian. It's very everything. Everybody hunted and ate animal foods, okay? So it's up to us. People can talk about what they do to the animals. Yes, they do horrible things to the animals, but they do horrible things to the plants too. Okay, and that needs to be talked about. We need balance, okay? And it is possible to obtain animal foods that don't come from the commercial food industry. First of all, goat and lamb are not raised by the commercial food industry. So if you eat those meats, you can eat them without worrying about them being sprayed up and injected with stuff, because those are not high demand meats. Same thing with deer, possum, rabbit, frogs. Those are raccoon, those squirrel. Those are all animals that people do eat in the United States. Okay? Gator, even. People eat in the United States. But if you want to eat the basic chicken, beef, and pork, you can get that from local farms. It's not that difficult. Every city has farmers markets surrounding it. If you live in a rural area, you got farmers markets. But there's a great book. The book is called High on the Hog, a culinary journey from Africa to America. Okay, High on the Hog, a culinary journey from Africa to America, and is written by a woman named Jessica B. Harris. I recommend that book because she talks a lot about Afro-American cooking and Caribbean cooking and African cooking, how people cook in Africa, and the dishes and the similarities. And she talks about how absurd it is to say that Black Americans don't know how to eat, that we didn't know how to feed ourselves, that all these habits were unhealthy because we were feeding the most important people, and we have a long legacy, a long culinary legacy in this country. And that book is an excellent book. I would tell someone to check out. But I'm saying all this to say, I'm going to wrap up the video. I definitely say, to really understand the full spectrum of what I'm saying about my issues with Soul Food Junkies, please look at my other videos that I mentioned earlier. And also, other key thing about soul food is that it comes from the soul, right? That the people making it have their heart involved. Another important thing we could say about food is the importance of praying over it and the energy of the person, the people who prepared it. Now, when you have a loving dish, loving dishes prepared by somebody and people who really love you and they're putting their soul into it, that even more increases the nutritional value and the chi of that food, okay? So these are all things we really need to think about. But I would say that soul food is unhealthy now because a lot of people are afraid of using lard, and they use Crisco, and they're spraying using Pam and margarine. Because my grandmother, who's 91, who is very healthy, grew up eating these foods, but now she doesn't have butter, she has margarine. She's drinking diet soda and Splenda. And you can't tell her any different because that's what her doctor told her, and that's what Weight Watchers told her. And a lot of older people have been convinced that those ways that they grew up on were unhealthy. Okay, and a lot of them are not sick because they're eating bacon or pork chops. They're sick because of all the bread, the flour, the pancakes, the waffles, and all of the sodas and the juice and all the Kool-Aid that apparently some black people drink. Like, I wasn't raised on Kool-Aid, but I got older and always heard this Kool-Aid joke that so many black people drink Kool-Aid. Well, that's a short prescription for cancer and diabetes and being fat and having bad skin and everything else. So that's really the culprit, okay? So I'm not going to talk any longer. Check my other videos. Check the people that I told you to check. Mary Enig, Sally Fallon. Sally Fallon's excellent book, Nourishing Traditions. It's a cookbook of traditional foods from around the world, okay? And full of facts and good research. Nourishing Traditions, Real Food by Nina Plank, and Deep Nutrition, Why Our Genes Need Traditional Foods by Catherine Shanahan, MD. And certainly Weston A. Price, Nutrition and Physical Degeneration, okay? And other than that, you can follow my blog, thebodyscientist.blogspot.com. You can find me on Twitter at Body Scientist and Queen_Makeda. You can find me on Facebook at Makeda Voletta The Body Scientist. And please join my YouTube page, The Body Scientist 81. Okay, thanks people.